There's so much information about ships and officers that I wish I knew when I first started out playing Star Trek Fleet Command. Luckily for you, however, I've compiled it all into this video so that you have a big leg up on the competition. Now real quick, let's go over to our shipyard and dry docks first. As you upgrade your shipyard, you'll unlock newer and more powerful ships that you'll be able to build. And for your primary warships and surveys, you'll also need to unlock their paths on the research tree. After that, you'll be able to build these ships once you've acquired all of their blueprints. Now a nice thing here though is that unlocking a ship in the research tree will give you all of the blueprints you need to build that ship, so you don't have to go out and grind for it once you've got it researched. Now the dry docks are what allow you to send out multiple ships into the galaxy. The more dry docks, the more ships you can send out at once, and as you level them up, it'll also be cheaper and faster to repair your damaged ships. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, let's get into the 4 different types of ships. There are battleships, explorers, interceptors, and surveys. The last of those you'll primarily use to mine materials around the galaxy, but let's talk about the warships because that's where it gets fun. You'll be able to identify the type of ship you're looking at with the symbol beside their name, which is easily identifiable when looking at enemies in the galaxy. But as a cheat sheet, the big bomb is a battleship, the star is an explorer, and the wing is an interceptor. Now each type of warship is weaker and stronger against another type. If you click scan on an enemy and then click on their symbol here, you'll be able to see the combat triangle, which explains that battleships are strong against explorers, explorers are strong against interceptors, and interceptors are strong against battleships. It's kind of like the starters in Pokemon: fire, water, and grass, although just like my Charizard in Pokemon, my strongest ship takes out everything. Now the strength of your ship is determined by the attack, defense, and health stats combined. This number will help you gauge your power compared to those enemies out there in the galaxy. However, this number does not take into account your officer abilities, which can heavily affect the outcome of the battle. Now I'll get into those in just a second here, but to raise your strength, you can upgrade your ship, add officers to it, as well as research upgrades in the combat tree. To level up your ship, you can use ship XP, which you'll obtain by completing events and quests, or you can farm hostiles, which will give you more XP the higher level they are. Farming hostiles will also drop PvE chests, which will give you a bit of extra loot like ship parts. Now generally, the type of ship you fight will drop their ship parts, so if you're looking for interceptor parts, try to take down those interceptors. Now you can acquire plenty of ship parts by completing quests as well. However, they're probably the hardest upgrade materials to come by, so if you're missing ship parts to upgrade your ship, don't hold back on using your Latinum here to do so. Now the grade of your ship is shown by the star level beside it. To upgrade each ship, you'll need its respective level of parts and materials. For example, this Envoy that I have here is a grade 2 ship. To upgrade it, I'm going to need grade 2 survey parts as well as a few other materials. Now once I've acquired all of the upgrades for this level, I can now tier up the ship, and this will allow me to upgrade its parts even further, as well as allow me to level it up to a higher max level. Now one important thing to note here is that there are 2 types of weapons that your ship can have, either energy or kinetic. Now if I go to upgrade my ship's weapons, you'll notice that these are all energy weapons. However, if we go over to this other ship, you can see that it has 2 kinetic weapons and 1 energy weapon. Now to my knowledge, there isn't much difference between the 2 weapons in general for battle. However, certain upgrades affect only one type of weapon, as well as some officers have abilities which only affect kinetic or energy weapons. Now let's talk a bit about specialty ships. Among your warships and surveys, you have some ships which are used for very specific tasks. For example, there are ships specific to mining a certain material, like the Botany Bay with data, the USS Discovery for mycelium, and the Ferengi Devore for latinum. Now there are also specific ships for taking down types of hostiles, like the USS Franklin for swarms, or the Stella for armadas. Now you can't unlock these ships in the research tree, and instead you'll have to complete special events to unlock their blueprints. Now these specialty ships become more important a little later on, so don't worry about them too much if you're a brand new player. Now there are some important ships to keep note of though. The Talia. At level 14, the Talia will become your best warship until you reach the 20s. Now at level 20, 22 and 24, you'll be able to build the Kara, Vaklas, and the Kumari respectively, which I hope I said those names right. I don't really know how to pronounce them. However, I'd advise not to go all in on upgrading all of these ships, as the material needed to upgrade them overlap, and you might get stuck with a weaker version of multiple ships. In fact, I would even recommend skipping some of them in order to get a more powerful version of one ship. For instance, on my account, I skipped upgrading the Kara so I could save my hard-earned grade 3 material to prioritize upgrading my Vaklas. Now at level 16, you'll unlock the Envoy. This is hands down the best survey ship that you will have access to until you reach level 26. It has a fast mining speed and plenty of protected cargo, which is what you'll want on your surveys as you leave them overnight to mine materials. Now your protected cargo capacity is very important, and this is because if any PvP players take down your surveys, they won't be able to steal as much of your mined resources. Now also, as a side note, I would highly recommend pushing your reputation for the Federation faction to unlock the USS Saladin later on. The Federations, Romulans, and Klingons all have their own powerful faction ships, and the Saladin is the strongest of the three, so I definitely recommend going for that one. Alright, now we've talked a lot about the ships, but let's get into the officers because they are very important. First off, you collect officer shards by collecting recruit tokens and then opening them in the recruit tab. Now the best way to collect recruit tokens are by completing events and missions. You can also get faction-specific recruit tokens if you have a high enough reputation with them. Now it can be a little confusing at first glance, but let me break down how your officers will affect your ship's stats. You'll be able to place 3 officers on the bridge of your ship. The officer in the middle of your bridge will be your captain. Now each officer has a unique captain and officer ability. Your captain will be able to utilize both of its captain maneuver and its officer ability, whereas your officers will only be able to use their officer ability. For example, my captain here is Next Gen LaForge. His captain's maneuver decreases the opponent's damage by 10%, and his officer ability increases the shield health of the ship. Each of your officer abilities will raise in strength when you rank up your officers. However, to increase your captain's maneuver ability, you can assign officers that synergize with the captain. Officers who synergize with the captain will have a gold thunder icon beside them. So if I select Lieutenant Picard here, as well as Next Gen Riker, they both add synergy to my captain's maneuver. And with this, my ability now decreases enemy damage by 20% instead of 10%. Now let's talk about crew stats. All of your officers have stats for attack, shield, and health. When assigned to your ship, all of their stats will be added together and you'll be able to gain bonuses which then add up to your total ship strength. Each ship has a total amount of boosts that your officers can add to it. You can see here with 3,000 of each stat on my ship, I have maxed out my bonus of 300% to my attack, defense, and shield stats. But if you're really obsessed with numbers, you can also see the exact amount of boost it gives your ship if you press the little info button on the details section right here. Now when building your crew, you should prioritize having officers with good abilities on your bridge over the stats. However, on the lower section here, your deck, that's where you're going to want to add officers with the most strength to boost your ship's stats. Now the officers on the lower deck here won't have any usable abilities unless they have a below deck ability, which some officers like this one can have. Mainly these officers are down there just for a stat boost. And speaking of those stat boosts, the one that you want to prioritize the most to boost up your ship is health. This will help your ship stay out in the galaxy for longer, allowing you to take down more hostiles every time you send it out. In Fleet Command, survivability is key. Or if you just got super powerful officers like me, you can just max out every stat instead. However, officers aren't only for fighting. Many of them have other useful abilities, such as those on my Envoy here. You can see I've got Ston as my captain, which will help me mine ore quicker, as well as increase my cargo space. Now I'll talk more about important officers here in a bit, but first, let's take down some hostiles real quick to show you how combat works in this game. Haha! Take that, Romulan Patrol! That's probably why they hate me so much, actually. After taking down a hostile, you can open up your inbox and you can see the history of all your battle victories and losses, as well as see the history of other players who have destroyed your ships. In this example, you can see at the start of my battle, my captain maneuver activated, and for the entire fight, I took 20% less damage from the opponent. Now notice, when I take damage here, I'm primarily taking shield damage and not much hull damage. Your whole health is the actual health of your your ship, and if that drops to 0, then your ship has been destroyed. The shield has its own amount of health and mitigates the damage you take from enemies. Now, it doesn't completely negate the damage, but it does greatly reduce the amount of damage that you take. After each fight, your shield health will regenerate on its own. On the other hand, the health of your hull will not regenerate. You gotta put some wrenches to that sucker to get it fixed. Now in this example, you can see during the course of this fight, my shields got depleted. You can see that I was only taking about 100 damage of hull health over the course of every hit. That's thanks to my shield mitigating all of the damage, but after they were depleted, all of the opponent's damage went straight to my health and destroyed my ship. That's the basic of how a fight goes in Fleet Command. Now one important thing I want to show you here though is the difference between hostiles and some other ships. For example, there are some important officers, which I'll get into here in just a minute, like Chen and Moreau have abilities that only help against hostiles. So then that begs the question, what does the game consider a hostile? It's only the ships that are colored red. Other players' ships, which are blue, and boss ships, which are yellow, are not considered hostiles. You can see here in this example that Picard's captain maneuver did not activate in this battle because it was a PvP fight. Now technically, that's not a hostile, but if I fight the red and it is hostile, it does activate. So just keep this in mind when creating your crew, as you might be confused on why some of your abilities aren't being activated during some battles. All right, now that we've got all of that down, let's talk about the best early game officers that you want to unlock and upgrade. Now the best general officers are those who decrease enemy damage. I'll say it again. Survivability is key, and mitigating the damage will help you take down more hostiles throughout the galaxy. Now, for those of you who are just really starting out, Next Gen LaForge as your captain, paired with other Next Gen officers to synergize, will be one of your best crews. And if you go to the Star Trek Fleet Command website and type in my code, you new players will be able to unlock Next Gen Data and Riker for free. I'm level 25, and I still use them because they're just that solid. You'll want to aim to get Chen and Moreau as well, as they are renowned as the best early game officers for overall hostile hunting, as they decrease enemy damage. Survivability. One officer that is a little more difficult to get is Pike. He's an epic officer, however his captain maneuver, paired with Moreau and Chen, is one of the best hostile hunting crews in the game, as they are all there to serve to mitigate damage. Now the captain that I've mainly been using is Lieutenant Picard. Now he is only available if you purchase him, but synergizing him with other next gen officers gives me an 11,000 health Apex shield, which paired with my regular ship shields mitigate nearly all of the damage I take to my hull's health. I can farm hostiles for hours with this crew, like literally, I'm not kidding. I took down like 200 lower level hostiles at some point without even needing to repair my ship. However, remember earlier how I mentioned some abilities only work against hostiles? I found out the hard way against bosses that my Picard shield was not activating. Yeah, that wasn't great. So now when I need to face bosses, I'll switch him around with Next Gen LaForge as my captain to decrease their damage by 20%. Which you'll notice LaForge's ability doesn't specifically say against hostiles. That means that his ability will always activate no matter who it is that you're facing. However, it's important to do some trial and error work if you really want to get the best crew for your ship. Experiment with your crew and you can find some surprising combinations that work better for specific fights, but maybe do worse for others. Now, other important officers to watch out for early on are ones for your surveys. T'Pring, Ston, and Barrow are all must-haves for increasing your gas, ore, and crystal mining speed, which you will need a lot of to upgrade your ships, as well as their officer abilities help increase your cargo capacity and protection. Garouche is another important officer that you can unlock for free as you level up your syndicate level by completing events. His captain's maneuver will increase your protected cargo if you need it. He can also increase your warp range, which can be very useful in completing some quests or just exploring the galaxy. But the best part of Garouche is his insane officer stats, which give you huge boosts to your ship's strength. And Cadet Scotty is also a very important officer because he increases your warp range. So look out for all of these officers that I mentioned here, as they're going to be your best and most useful early game officers. The last thing that I want to mention here is you'll notice that some officers have abilities with status effects such as burning or morale. Here's what those status effects do. Ships with burning applied to them lose lose 1% of their hull health each round. Hull breach will increase the critical damage to those affected by 150%. Morale increases your ship penetration by 10%. And finally, if a ship is affected by assimilate, officer abilities have their effectiveness reduced by 25%. So that is everything that I wish I knew when I started out when we're talking about ships, combat, and officers. Hopefully, you guys learned a few things that you didn't know, and I'd love to know what crews are working for you guys right now, so leave me something in the comments. Maybe there's something even better than I've suggested here. Now it's time to go back to terrorizing the galaxy. Peace out. Or not peace.